is an incredible thing. But I watched where Schumer, he's such a bad guy. I mean, I've known the guy for a long time, and he's such a bad guy. You know, at some point they should say, you know, you did a great job. Thank you. Congratulations. Wouldn't it be good? I would say that if they did a good job. Their philosophies are so different. But if they did a good job, I'd be happy for the country. They've been after this guy for years and years and years. And, you know, he's a violent guy. He gets up there and he tries to imitate my dance a little bit. But he's a violent guy. And he's killed millions of people. He's tortured. They have a torture chamber in the middle of Caracas that they're closing up. But he's tortured people. And now what they do, the radical left, they actually have people, and it's hard to get them. They're all paid people. Most of these people are paid. You know they're paid when they have brand new, beautiful printed signs by like the highest quality printer, and you have a woman, free Maduro, and the sign is before we even did the attack. You know, free Maduro. Why do you want him freed? I don't know, but he should be free. Oh, she reads a sign. What does that say? It says free. Well, that's what I believe. And you know, you see the sign. It's like, Lisa, we should all have quality signage like that. The one thing I want their sign maker. The guy is great. He does beautiful signage. You know, the old days was better when they used to write out their own sign, wasn't it? They'd make a sign in the basement. They'd have an old broken board holding up a sign, and it's made with a magic marker, sloppy as hell, and it meant something. But today, when you have that yellow and black, they should use different colors a little bit. But the yellow is a beautiful shade of yellow. No, I want to find out who that is. I want him to work for the Republican campaign. He's much better than our guy, whoever the guy is. But the United States proved once again that we have the most powerful, most lethal, most sophisticated, and most fearsome. It's a fearsome military on planet Earth, and it's not even close. You know, I've been saying it for a long time. Nobody can take us. Nobody. We don't want to have it. We don't have a discussion, but you read all and you see everything else. Nobody could have done that. Nobody has our weapons. Nobody has the quality of our weapons. The problem is we don't produce them fast enough. We're going to start producing them much faster. We're going to be very tough on the companies. We have the best weapons in the world, but it takes too long to get them, including allies. When allies want to buy them, they have to wait 4 years for a plane, 5 years for a helicopter. We're not letting that happen anymore. We're telling our defense contractors, you're going to start building faster. You know, guy makes... I have a big problem with it. I'm the king. I have sold more Boeings than any human being on earth. They gave me an award, Salesman of the Year. I said, what about Salesman of the in the history of Boeing? I've sold more Boeing planes than any man in history by far, probably over 1,000. Over 1,000 planes. I said, that's the good news. But why should they wait 3-4 years to get a plane? They should build them, get them immediately. The F-35s, it takes too long to get them. The Apache helicopter. I mean, I had India coming to me, sir, I've been waiting 5 years. We're changing it. We're changing it. India ordered 68 Apaches, and Prime Minister Modi came to see me. Sir, may I see you, please? Yes. I have a very good relationship with him. He's not that happy with me because, you know, they're paying a lot of tariffs now because they're not doing the oil, but they are. They've now reduced it very substantially, as you know, from Russia. We're getting rich because of tariffs, by the way. I hope everyone understands that. They hate to report. We're going to have over $650 billion poured into our country or coming in shortly because of tariffs. You know, they're finding all of these pockets of money a couple of weeks ago. Sir, we're off by $39 billion. Oh, is that good or bad? Meaning, do we have it or are we short of it? Sir, it's $39 billion that we can't account for. That means we have an extra 39. Yes, sir. I said, well, what are you saying? We just don't know where it came from. I said, check the tariff shelf. Sir, that tariff doesn't start until September. He said, no. It started about a month and a half ago. Check it. Comes back 25 minutes later. Sir, you were right. It came from tariffs. This never happened to us before, where we find plus 39 billion, not million, plus 39 billion. They were missing. We've taken in $650 billion or shortcoming, and That's because I'm being nice. If I want to be, and we have national security because of tariffs. And frankly, we have a big Supreme Court case. I hope they do what's good for our country. I hope they do the right thing. The president has to be able to wheel and deal with tariffs. Now, if you have the right president, it's good. You have the wrong president, if you have the wrong president, nothing's good. Tariffs are the least of your problems. We found that out for 4 years. We had the worst president, did the worst job. They had the worst policy. We have to even run against these people. Now, I won't say cancel the election. They should cancel the election because the fake news will say, he wants the elections canceled. He's a dictator. They always call me a dictator. Nobody's worse than Obama and the people that surrounded Biden. Not Biden. I don't think it was Biden. He didn't know what the hell was going on, okay? The election was rigged. He had no idea what happened. He still doesn't. The auto pen. And by the way, you ought to make a big deal out of the auto pen. The auto pen was your president. Because most of the things were signed by auto pen. And you're not allowed to do that. I signed very little. Now I just sign everything because it's just so crazy. But like I had the other day, we elevated a general to 4 stars. I think you should sign that. That's a big deal. A general did a great job, was elevated to 4 stars. And I had the general in, and I signed it in front of him, held it up. You got to sign that. You can't give it to an auto pen. And you can always tell an auto pen. One thing, it has 2 little tiny dots. You know that? 2 little dots. You know what that's from? 2 pins. They go bing, bing. They're wonderful things. But you got to sign it. And the law is you have to sign it. If somebody's, telling the auto pen person, he has to be authorized by the President of the United States. Well, he wasn't. The guy barely knew the President. How many times did you speak to the president, right? He said 2. And they just spoke about the weather. It was like this. But he was never authorized to sign. And I think 95% of the things were signed by auto pen. You can tell because the auto pen is a nice, clean signature, and his signature's a mess. The only thing he signed was, which is nice, was Hunter's pardon. That's the only thing that we can find that he signed. Most of it he didn't sign. So somebody's sending papers to sign. And he wasn't the president. First of all, the election was rigged. You ought to have voter ID. You ought to insist on it. You ought to insist on it. Can you imagine? In California, they not only don't have voter ID, but if an official at the voting booths, which they don't have, by the way, because it's all mail, if an official, a voting official, even asks somebody for voter ID, sir, would like to see your identification. Do you come from our country? They put him in jail for tampering with the election. Okay? We got to straighten this out before it gets too crazy. California is more corrupt than any place. California is more corrupt than Minnesota. And I won Minnesota. Well, Tom's going, I think so. Well, it's close. It can't be proportionately, probably nothing's more corrupt, right? Yeah, right. He says you got to win. I'll tell you what, I did great there 3 times. I was surprised 3 times. Those elections are corrupt. They got you 1 time, too. But I heard a long time ago, but they got you. But they got to straighten those out. But we have to have voter ID. And when you confront a Democrat about voter ID, like in a debate or something, I said it a couple of times with Biden, and they're very embarrassed when they say, we want voter ID, voter identification. The only reason somebody doesn't want that is because they want to cheat. Our elections are crooked as hell. And you can not only win elections over that, and not only win future elections, but you'll win every debate because the public is really angry about it. And you ought to pass the SAFE Act, or whatever you're going to call it. Are we going to SAVE Act or the Save America Act? I think we're going to change the name a little bit. You're going to put that up for a vote? I think everybody in this room certainly should do it. And it's a bad vote for them because they're voting against things like voter ID and other things that are almost equal to voter ID. But when somebody says, no, we don't want voter ID, that means they're crooked. And the public understands it. You win elections with that. But I think it would be really important, Save America Act, if you would put that up for a vote. It's got my total endorsement. And all it is common sense things about the election. And they'll fight it like crazy because they cheat. That's the only way they can win. When you have policy so bad, when you have policy with men and women's sports, and they fight like hell for it. They still are. I saw the other day a person that you know very well, a congressman, was fighting like hell. And, you know, I was out the other day with somebody, and I was with an ex-football player. The guy was massive. His leg was like this. And a young woman who plays flag football, and she's very good, supposedly, as an athlete. She's smaller than this guy's leg, okay? And if they were playing football together, he wouldn't even have to run. He could just keep walking. They couldn't take him down. You know, the guy, he can't even believe it. But there are so many. They had a race, a long-distance race. They had champion men, women, you know, one of those marathon deals. The man finished 5 hours and 14 minutes and 36 seconds sooner. He beat the champion woman by 5 hours. It's so demeaning to women. It's so ridiculous, right? It's so ridiculous. The weightlifting, take a look at the weightlifting records. One record stood for 18 years, and it was broken by 112 pounds. They couldn't get 1/8 of an ounce, you know? They'd put an 1/8 of an ounce on, and she's going to break the record for her mom, who's sitting in the front with her father. I'm going to break it, Dad. And she's out there. We're adding 1/8 of an ounce to each side. This record has stood, ladies and gentlemen, for 18 years. But she's going to do it. She's looking to get into the Olympics, right? And she gets up, and they put a little tiny thing like this, little thing. And my wife, by the way, my wife hates when I do this. She said, you know, she's a very classy person, right? She said, it's so unpresidential. I said, but I did become president. You know, she hates when I dance. I said, everybody wants me to dance. Darling, it's not presidential. She actually said, could you imagine FDR dancing? She said that to me. And I said, there's a long history that perhaps she doesn't know. Because he was an elegant fellow, even as a Democrat, right? He was the attack by Japan, you know, he was quite elegant. But he wouldn't be doing this. But nor would too many others. But she says, darling, please, the weightlifting is terrible. And I have to say this, the dancing they really like. She said, they don't like it, they're just being nice to you. I said, that's not right. The place goes crazy. They're screaming, dance, please. But the weightlifting, but no, the girl gets up. And you see, I want to be more, but I have somebody watching. I want to be more effusive. I want to really, yeah. But she gets it, and drops the thing, walks off the stage crying. Her mother's crying, her father's crying. Guy gets up. He said, have you lifted before? A little bit. And he walks up, bing. He could have gone ding, 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 ding. I think it was 112 pounds, huh? It's crazy. Or the beautiful boxer, they have boxing now, and that they have a young gentleman who transitioned, who's a very good boxer, but he wanted to be a woman, which is, you know, to each his own. Because I want to be very liberal when it comes to these subjects. I'm trying to get that vote. It's not an easy vote to get. It's very tough for me to get it. But he transitioned, and he transitioned, and the girl was a champion boxer from Italy, remember? She got up, first round. He hit her, boom, with a left. A left, for those, everybody here knows about, but a left, Lisa knows better than anybody, but a left is defense. He goes, boom. She's like, oh my, she walked to the corner, remember? She didn't go down, but she did everything else. But she said, I've never been hit like that before. I don't want to go out again. You can do it. You can do it. Bang. She walked off. She said, he happened to win the gold medal, that young woman. He won the gold medal. There were two transition people. They both won gold medals. The whole thing is ridiculous. You have policy on your side. They don't have policy on your side. Right? You have policy. And I saw this guy fighting like hell. The swimming records is ridiculous when you look at the swimming, any records. It's crazy, and it's so demeaning to women. Women are the, and for a long time, they refused to talk about it. They were embarrassed to talk about it. Now they do talk about it. They talk about it openly, but they have the worst policy on everything, open borders. We want open borders. They still want an open border. We did the greatest job ever on borders, and I think they forgot it. My guy said to me today, I have a great guy, Ross. He's the greatest speechwriter. He said, sir, let's not mention the border. Nobody cares about the border anymore. Can you believe it? This was the biggest, this was the biggest thing there was. It says to me, nobody cares about the border because it has a shelf life. I fixed the border. I fixed it in my first term, but now I really had to fix it. It was much worse, when I came into office. Millions and millions of people were pouring into our country. And I fixed it, and my guy, who's incredible, says, people don't want to hear it, sir. You've done that. The problem is people forget that I did it. They totally forget. They were talking about the other day, we don't like Donald Trump on this, we don't like Donald Trump on that. And somebody just out of the blue said, well, he did an unbelievable job. Who cares about that? They're saying, that's been done. What do we do about that, Mike? Everything you do. It's almost like, what have you done lately is the way you have to run your life. In other words, I could have the most unbelievable 4 years, and I guess I'm not allowed to run. I'm not sure. Is there a little something out there that I'm not allowed to run? But let's assume I was allowed to run. I could have, there's going to be a constitutional movement. No, I could have the most unbelievable 4 years. Everything was great, but in the last week, I made a little slip up in something, and you lose the election. It's like, so we can't let them forget that we did such a great job on the border. By the way, Venezuela, everyone, they're marching in the streets, they love it, except in New York. I mean, where they find these people? These people, and they're not these people are a mess. I know it's not nice to say that. These people are a mess. Where do they find these people? They're the worst looking people I've ever seen. They got hats that are all frayed and they look like, they're all paid. They don't even know what they're talking. When the reporters don't interview them because they know that it's, the press is so anti. It's hard to believe the press could be so anti because it's all common sense. It's not, we're conservative, whatever, doesn't matter. We're all common sense people. It's not even conservative, it's common sense. But the press has no credibility whatsoever. Think of it. I got 97% bad stories on one network, 93% on the other, and I won in a landslide. You know what that means? The press has no credibility. That's all it means. And we got to keep it that way. So I don't talk too much about the swimming, the weightlifting, the boxing. I don't talk about it. You know why? I want to start bringing it up about a week before the election because I don't want them to correct themselves. I don't want them to say, we've decided that we don't want to have men playing in women's sports. That'd be a devastating blow for us. Because that's, they say it's an 80-20. No. It's about a 98-2 issue. We've decided that we will not have open borders where the entire world, from the Congo, prisons from the Congo, these are extraordinarily tough people. These are people that make our motorcycle gangs look like fine young men. Okay? Our motorcycle gangs are wonderful people by comparison. No, they come in from prisons in the Congo. They come in from prisons from all over the world, but in particular Venezuela, Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua comes in, and Tren de Aragua, they say it's the worst gang in the world. It makes our gangs look like little sweethearts. It makes our gangs, you want to take them out to dinner, they're so nice. They cut off the fingers of people. One guy makes a phone call in Colorado. The governor stinks in Colorado. He has no control. So Tren de Aragua, they don't want to do anything about it. So ICE has to go in and take them out because the governor doesn't want to do anything. But they make a phone call. They've taken over my building. The landlord's calling. They took over his building. So the governor doesn't want to do anything. But he calls the police, the guy. They come in. Did you call the police? This is Trindade Rugg. We're talking to the man that owns the building. Did you call the police? Yeah. Boom, they cut off his fingers. If you call him again, the next time your hand comes off. Can you believe it? The guy's walking around, his fingers were cut off. And these are the animals that we're throwing the hell out of here. Washington, D.C. is now the safest city in the country. And you people know that better than anybody because you were, I mean, think of it. You're in Congress, you're respected people, you're afraid to walk outside. Washington, D.C. Now, we had a terror attack 4 weeks ago, and one person's looking down from heaven, and the other one is actually recuperating and going to make it, I think, but really badly hurt, really badly hurt. Most positive mother I've ever, no, my son's going to be fine, sir. The mother was telling me that the night of the attack, I went just like I went to you. I spoke to this incredible woman. Sir, everyone's praying for my son. He's going to be fine. The doctors thought she was, just hoping against hope. There was no chance. And 2 weeks ago, he got up and started walking around. It's amazing, actually. So maybe some really bad, looks like he could be okay. He's going to have pretty bad after effects. But that was a terrorist attack on people that are doing a great job. And it could have been anywhere. But we haven't had a murder. We would have, on average, 2 murders a week in Washington. I don't even like talking about it. Two murders a week in Washington, D.C. We haven't had one in 7 months. People can walk out now. You can walk down with your wife down to the restaurants, which are booming, by the way. I mean, if you go back to before I got in, and we did a pretty good job 4 years ago, but it was never this, in my first term. So when we were during the first term, we were pretty good, but it wasn't like that big of an issue. It became a big issue because people were being mugged all over the place. We had a couple of people working in the White House that were killed. We had one guy waiting for his wife in a car. They said, "Get out of your car." He said, "Well, I'm waiting for my wife." They blew his head off. The wife is walking up to the car. Animals. And then they get angry when I say, "They're animals." Nancy Pelosi, "They're not animals, they're human beings." No, they're not. This is another thing. That's a 98-2 issue also. No, they're animals, and we've taken them out. We've took out over 2,000 people, brought them back to their countries from where they came, or they're in prison now in Washington. Because it's not just like, you have to take the bad ones out. 2%, 3% of the population causes 90% of the crime. Think of it. 2% of the population in Washington, D.C. causes 90% of the crime. So when you get rid of the 2%, we took out over 2,000 people, got them out of the country or in prison. Some were so bad that we didn't want to send them back to their countries because they'll come back in, even though it's hard now, but they're pretty smart. They're sick, but they're smart. But you're now living in one of the safest cities in the country. It's a great thing. You can walk to the restaurants. Restaurants are booming. New restaurants are open. They were all closing. You wouldn't have had a restaurant. And I don't know about you, but to me, those soldiers standing there look so good. I'm not going to feel safe walking down the street without them. I don't think you would either. Even though, we took out so many criminals, I just feel better. To me, they're beautiful. I look at these soldiers, and you feel safe. You feel safe. I don't think if we took them out, even if the crime wasn't much, it would definitely be more. We did a great job in Chicago. They don't want to talk about it. We, against all this slob of a governor, this stupid slob, who's the family threw him out of the business. He was a dope, and the Pritzker family. But they threw him out of the business. And the mayor, he's a low IQ person, extremely low IQ. We should give everybody, like, these competency tests, right? The cognitive, they call it cognitive. I'm the only president that went for cognitive. I think every president and vice president should be forced to take cognitive exams, mental tests, like, are they intelligent? Wouldn't it be nice? Do you think Walz could pass a cognitive test, as an example? Do you think Kamala could? I don't think Gavin could. He's got a good line of crap, but other than that, he couldn't pass. I mean, here's a guy didn't want to have water coming down from the Pacific Northwest. Why? You know, they have a little tiny fish, this big, it's a little tiny fish. Not doing well. You know why? No water. They're sending water. It's too much. It's killing the fish. So they cut it off. And then they have 25,000 houses burned down. They don't know why. No, I think, I believe in it. I'm the only one that took a cognitive test. I do, it's the worst. If I don't do a medical exam, because I've had times where I went longer, because I'm busy. If I don't do a medical exam, they say, Trump's not doing an exam. There must be something wrong with him. If I do the exam, they say, why did he do this? Why did he do this part of an exam? He did too much. There's something wrong with him. Do you remember there was a period, Mike, where I had 32 days in a row I did one press conference, 2, 3, sometimes 4. I do them behind the desk. I don't even just do it. I do press conferences. But I do many press conferences. So in 32 days, and then one day, just one day. This is 32 days in a row. Must be some kind of a crazy record. Then one day, do you remember I didn't do one? Because I took Kai, my very brilliant golfer, beautiful young lady who swings the club so beautifully. She's a great scratch golfer and loves playing. Grandpa, would you take me to play golf? So I ran, I play golf in like record. I play speed golf. It's better that way. You know the expression? Miss it quick. No, I play speed golf, but I'm a good golfer. Everybody knows. Anybody that I've beaten in this group. But I love to play golf, but I don't get to play much. But I took off 2 hours, and the press couldn't find me. But they knew I was there because they follow me. And I was getting, are you okay? Guys are calling me up. Some of the guys in this room. Sir, are you okay? Yeah, what's the problem? There's a report, sir, that you're no longer with us. Remember that? No. The report was that I don't want to use the D word. It's such a horrible word. Dead. I don't like it. There's a report, sir, that you're no longer with us. I said, well, I just hit a 280-yard drive. This isn't bad. And, it's one of the, and it took me a couple of weeks to get that one straightened out. The new one is they did a report in the fake news New York Times where I worked this day from early in the morning till late in the evening, but we don't give out a full schedule. It's like who the hell wants to give out a schedule to these people? But it's all work. And this, in particular, this day was brutal. I never got to leave the seat. You couldn't do anything. It was just one after another after another. And this went on from early in the morning till late in the evening. And my people gave out a report. He had lunch. They show a report, lunch with somebody. And they did a story. Donald Trump is slowing down. He only had lunch. And then he went back up. And they said, that's malfeasance, whoever did, right? No, it's terrible. I was actually more angry with my people than I was with the New York Times. But they wrote a story. And it takes you a period of time to recover from these hits. And it's almost no matter what you do, but you have to keep a positive eye. But we have a fake press. We did a thing that's so incredible on medicine that nobody has ever done it. Reducing favored nations, most favored nations, we reduced the cost of medicine at levels that have never even been dreamt of before. We should win the elections on just that thing if we did nothing else and went home, go home. We did favored nations where we're bringing down the price of a pill. As an example, in London, the pill sells for $10. In New York, it sells for $130. That's 13 times as much. Most favored is I want to pay what the lowest nation in the world is paying. Everybody knew about it, but nobody had the guts or the stamina to do it, or the respect from other nations, but I do. And then you also had to get the drug companies. The drug companies were not easy, but they were much easier compared to the other nations. So the other nations used to tell the drug companies, we're not going to pay more. You kept it for years the same price. Everything, we just kept going up, up, up. And finally I had the drug companies and I said, listen, fellas, you can't do this. Can't do it anymore. I'm not going to let it. We're going to do it. And you're not going to do it. And I did things to them that were brutal. But I really found out it was the nations that were so tough. So when France was told that the pill will go from $10 to $30, it's a big increase, right? But it's not really. And that ours would come down from $12 or $13 down to $30. So theirs would go from 10 to 20 or 30, and ours would go from $13 down to, meaning $130 down to 20 or 30. So it's a huge drop for us. Now, depending on the way you calculate it, it could be thousands of percent down. It could also be 90% and 80%. You know, there's two ways of calculating. I don't know if you know. They said Donald Trump exaggerated. Now, there are two ways of calculating it. But calculate it at 80, 90%. But the other way is more accurate, like 900%, because that's what it really is. But there are two ways, but use to be generous, 90%. There hasn't been a reduction in 28 years, except for the 1 year where I got it down 1/4%, and I had a news conference. I was so proud of myself. The drug prices, prescription drugs, are going to be down by thousands of points, thousands. On that one item, you should win this election. The New York Times barely wrote about it. The other papers barely wrote about it. Nobody even knows that the drug prices. Now, people will say, you don't mind if I don't read this crazy teleprompter, do you? Because, do you mind? Because I have, it's called standard. But these things are so important because you guys got to get elected. Because if you don't get elected, we have a country that's going to go to hell. So we can't play games. Ladies and gentlemen, the sun will rise tomorrow, and when it rises, we don't need this bullshit. We need to talk about favored nations. And your numbers are coming down at levels that nobody's ever seen. We inherited high prices. We inherited a mess. We inherited the greatest inflation in history. And you know what was knocking it down? The bad economy that we inherited. We inherited bad. We now have the hottest economy in the history of our country. We have $18 trillion being invested in the United States. You have, every one of you have car plants, AI plants, plants of all different types. Because of tariffs. I hope we get the good ruling from the Supreme Court. I only hope we do, because it's given us tremendous national security. So let me just finish up, because I weave. I love to weave. If you ever weave and don't come back to the point, then that's a problem. Then you say, but when you weave and you go here and boom, 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 always coming back, then you're in good shape. But what's happening is, by doing what I did, we're getting numbers that are so low. But what did I do to the countries? I said, France, your health care for prescription drugs is going to go up triple. It's going from $10 a pill, just as an example. I called it the fat drug. You could say the fat drug, Ozempic. Ozempic is $80 in London, and it's $1,300 in New York. The fat drug. A friend of mine called me up. He said, what the hell is going on? A very rich guy, but I said, the fat drug doesn't work on you. Why are you even taking it? The drug has failed miserably, but he's a very loud, boisterous. He's not a bad guy, not a great guy, smart as hell. But he's a very rich guy. This drug, he could have paid millions for it. It wouldn't have mattered. But he said, in London, I'm paying $80. In New York, I'm paying like many times more than that. What the hell is that? That's because of what's happened. Because the nations held us back. So the drug companies, I made a deal with them. You're going to do it? They said, whatever the nations agreed to. The nations were a bigger problem than the drug companies. So I said, you tell me they will. They'll never agree, sir. I said, 100% they will. 100%. They said, sir, the smartest guys, Eli Lilly, Merck, Pfizer, all genius. They're all making numbers you wouldn't believe. The defense contractors are making more. That's why I'm going to say, you're making $45 million a year and you can't produce a frickin' helicopter for 7 years? We're going to talk to them about that. But I said to the France, I called up, as an example, France, just as an example, I like him, he's a nice guy. Emmanuel, you know Emmanuel Macron. I love the French accent. Emmanuel. They said, listen, you're going to have to raise your prices a little bit because we're paying 14 times more than you. That's a lot, right? We're paying numbers. In other words, we're making up for all of this deficit. No. I don't know.